Hi everybody, Tyler with Meeple Mountain here, bringing you another board game review, this time from our friends at Ivy Studios, who have given us graciously another expansion to their upcoming Kickstarter. That's going to be 3 big expansions in the big box for their hit game Moonrakers, which is a deck building game that merges and marries like social negotiation and table wheeling and dealing into the mix of an awesome deck builder. So we're excited to show you this. We've already showed you the Binding Ties expansion, so if you haven't checked that out yet, go back and watch that as well. It's another expansion that's coming out. This is the second expansion, which is Overload. Overload introduces, if you can see them here, a slew of new cards that adds additional aspects to every piece of the game, from contracts to quests to ship parts to all kinds of new cards that you can build and add into your deck that modify and kind of hybridize your strategy. So if you're familiar with Moonrakers, these cards are going to be really enticing to you because they are going to showcase all of the new ways that you can kind of modernize and hybridize your deck to make it fit whatever need and strategy arises for you throughout a game of Moonrakers. Now, in this particular video, I'm just going to talk about the expansion content, and I'm going to be talking about it in such a way that references things from the main game. So if you're not familiar with the base game of Moonrakers, I would encourage you to go back and watch our review of that as well, so you can get a feel for the base game before you jump into these expansions. But if you're familiar with Moonrakers, we're going to dive right in and look at all of the content and talk about what you can expect to find in this expansion to Moonrakers. So let's go ahead and jump in and let's look at what's in the box. The first set of cards we'll look at for the Overload expansion are the new empowered or hybridized cards, as I like to call them. You'll see here we've got a slew of cards that will actually be available in the armory, and there's 2 types of cards. There's the empowered cards and the hybrid cards. We have the misses here just so you know there will be more misses if you want them in your deck. The empowered cards here are going to basically be better versions of cards you know and love. Your reactor that gives you 3 engines, 3 actions, your thruster, which would be 3 cards, or a shield that blocks 2 hazards instead of 1. All of these cards are available for 4 coins in the store, and you can buy them like you would crew or ship parts and add them into your deck. These will make your actions, of course, more valuable and your turns more impactful as you go. Above that, you see that there's now hybridized cards that are also 4 or 5 coins, depending on which card you want to pick up. We have the Reactor and Thruster Pluses, which will give you a hybrid between the 2 cards. Reactor Plus giving you 2 actions and a card draw, and the Thruster giving you 2 cards and an additional action. So these cards obviously are going to change the way you take your turns and play the game. They're very powerful, which is why they're 5 coins each. Your Shield, which would let you block a hazard and give you an action, and your +2 damage, which is 2 damage and an action as well. These cards obviously are going to give you additional depth and strategy as you build and plan how you want to play your turns and have those turns play out. Being able to hybridize and not just solely rely on actions from reactors or cards from thrusters will allow you to have really dynamic turns, and I loved what these brought to the game as far as shopping choices as well as deck building choices. Here we have some examples of new crew cards that will be added to the deck that you can build and recruit into your shipbuilding deck as well. Now, of course, this expansion is called Overload, so the main new element or faction thing that this particular expansion introduces into the game of Moonrakers are these Overload tokens. Certain ship parts, some quests, and especially crew will reference adding and using Overload tokens. Now, new cards that are in the game sometimes may allow you to leave things out on the board once you play them. For instance, we have this crew member here that once you play him, you're going to add 3 Overload tokens to his card, and then you'll be able to remove them. This particular card says once per contract, remove 1 Overload token to deal 2 damage, and you won't discard this card until you remove all of your Overload tokens. Now, certain cards like this crew will allow you to add or remove Overload to any of your ship parts or perhaps crew or things like that. And so you'll be able to make these really fun engines going where you have crew or ship parts that are actively building and generating these Overload tokens, and you'll be able to keep those cards out and have them on command for later turns. So being able to build up your engine and functionally have things sit and be ready on the map for your turn is really nice. Like, you're not just at the whim of those 5 cards you draw every turn. Now you can plan and calculate for how you want to kind of build your engine and have passives that are sitting out ready to go for when you call on them and activate them to block hazards or deal additional damage or all kinds of really interesting interesting things in the game. And so adding these overload tokens and these kind of passive long-term cards really shakes up how you play Moonrakers in a good way. Here we have a fun look at the two new types of contracts that are being introduced in the Overload expansion as well. We have what are called the Flex contracts that are these really fun, shiny, foily cards, which is a great touch. And we have head-to-head contracts here as well. So let's start with the fill or flex contracts. These flex contracts basically are going to have this asterisk symbol, which means you need to have any requirement at all to meet them. So this one requires 2 reactors and 6 of whatever. It's a really great flex option. You'll notice the rewards are a little more straightforward on most of these cards, but being able to flex and fill with just whatever you have gives you all kinds of flexibility and options to fill those contracts. And oftentimes they're ones that once you're developed in the game, you can fill yourself as you go through. So these add a really nice element to the game, giving you just a different option. If you have kind of a wash of a hand that's all over the place and you can't really nail any contract, being able to jump onto a flex contract and fill all those needs with just whatever things your deck is providing you on that turn is really helpful. Next we have head-to-heads. Head-to-heads are really fun contracts that are entirely new and add a fun aspect to kind of the competition of the game. If you do a head-to-head contract, say I selected this energy transfer contract, anyone can join this contract, and it's not optional. I don't invite them, they hop on, and we compete. And then you're going to be able to basically compare the two combo of the symbols indicated. So in this case, it's thrusters and reactors. Every player is going to run their hand out that's participating, and you're going to see who has the most. Whoever has the most gets the first place reward, and whoever has the second most gets the second place reward, with ties kind of kicking things down to the next tier as you go. And so that's how head-to-heads will work. You can see there's different matches. This one would be crew and thrusters or crew and damage. So you could pick a head-to-head where you feel very confident about your ability to complete this quest, but it's also great if you want to kind of jump in on someone else's quest and beat them at their own game. It's amazing to sabotage someone else's turn when they're trying to get prestige points and you just steal that from them by having a really explosive hand pulling a bunch of thrusters, for instance. Being able to kind of have this competition is a really fun aspect and plays well with the Binding Ties expansion before it, because you won't be gaining prestige if you do a head-to-head competition as well, which adds a new interesting element of negotiation where your alliance and moving your relationship tokens is such a key aspect of the game now as well if you play these expansions together, which you can. So these add a really fun new aspect to the game as well. Here we have an example of some of the new contract quests and the personal quests, I should say, and ship parts that you'll be seeing in the expansion of Overload as well. And these, again, are going to add new elements to the game as well as play off of those new cards that we saw earlier and, of course, utilize the Overload faction function that we see in this new expansion. In the ship parts, you'll see that some of the ship parts have these really empowered symbols. That means they're going to be adding the bonus or those empowered versions of cards into your deck when you buy them. So it's another way that you can get those really cool cards into your deck at a discount. So for instance, I mean, this is a 3-cost card that's giving you a 4-cost card as well with your shipper. So it's a great value to buy this card. And these, again, will play off of the Overload function in the game. I really like this particular ship part here that says twice per contract. You may roll the hazard die and add 1 overload to this card. And then you can remove an overload to subtract 1 from a requirement for a quest. So this can be a fun way to, if you have a lot of shields, they have a shield strat going, build up free discounts that you need later that you can use at will. It's great. On the quest, there's some really fun quests now. This one is really great. Parasite. Complete a contract without playing any cards. So this is a great way to jump onto someone's quest and just ride their coattails and do nothing and still get something out of it. There's quests now that play off of trashing cards, a lot of cards on the same turn, or even completing a contract with flex requirements alone. So again, pushing you to do those flex contracts by yourself. There's all kinds of new emerging strategies that you can find as you go through the quests, as you go through the ship parts, and really build a ship and a strategy and a deck around how you want to play. Overload builds into that and gives you just additional layers of flexibility and replayability in the game. And that, in a nutshell, is everything you can expect to find in the box of the Overload expansion coming to the Moonrakers game from Ivy Studios. Again, this is a trilogy of expansions. There's going to be 3 of these nice little boxes coming out, as well as, I believe, a big box coming on this Kickstarter as well. So you have a place to put all the goodies together and have one cohesive experience with the game. Again, really appreciative to Ivy to send this copy to us and review it. It is worth noting, this will also, like my last review with Binding Ties, it'll have a game tray's little tray that will hold all of the parts and components together. Unfortunately, this one just did not have that ready yet, just because it's so soon on production, but that will have that. So you can expect, again, another really nice game tray that kind of sorts these components and keeps them separate if you want to do that. But it is worth mentioning again that you can play with the Overload expansion and the Binding Ties expansion together in the same game. You can merge everything together and have one big experience with all of these different strategies and elements kind of interplaying. And I think personally that makes the game better. Obviously, it's a lot for a first teach, so it's nice that you can modularize that and pull it out and let people experience the base game and then add those elements in like spice to make the game better and better. But as a tenured Moonraker, it is great to have these aspects in the game. It adds a lot of depth. It adds a lot more negotiation to the game and is really, really fun. Obviously, you got to look at the cards, but big highlight, takeaway points. The empowered cards and the hybrid cards are huge. It changes the way you play the game in a really good way. Now you don't have to kind of be at the whims of, oh man, the crew card that's up on top and the ship parts are garbage. What do I buy? I guess I try to get rid of one and see. Like, you're never having a bad time because you can always spend your money on something that makes your deck better now. You have these really nice, I'm partial to the hybrid cards. I think it's nice to be able to do everything with the same card. And so having those hybridized cards to keep your actions flowing is huge. Having a turn where you have just a bunch of reactors and thrusters and shields, and you can just chain cards ad nauseum as long as you have these really cool cards in your deck. And so it really incentivizes getting money. It makes money, in my opinion, more valuable because you're not just trying to buy the hopefully good ship part you're looking for. There's always something to spend money on now. And so having money is even more valuable than it was before. And I love that. Of course, the crew and the ship parts deck is huge now. And so there's always every game going to be a huge variety of what parts you could even try to buy. And it makes the game really enjoyable. It gives you more replayability, which I'm a firm believer is always more bang for your buck. From a rulebook perspective, each expansion comes with a nice little rulebook, very clear, very concise, offers some nice illustrations and walks you through every aspect that the game adds. And thankfully, these expansions are really detailed and have a lot of strategy behind them, but they're not complicated to understand. It's an easy jump in, easy plug and play to the base game. These little overload tokens are great. It's wonderful, as I mentioned before, having cards that stay with you, and then you can use those tokens as you need, and it gives you more flexibility, and it gives you the feel of more control over how you're playing the game. It's nice to not feel just so at the whim of the cards. You can get things out and be like, okay, I can plan, I know what I have, and you're developing, you have that feel of building that really functional engine. So all in all, really, really positive things. Love the new contracts, love the new cards, and again, these expansions are just adding on and building on each other to make Moonrakers just an even better game than it already was. From already having a great table presence and good depth, now it has great depth and additional incentives to build and push you towards that table negotiation, which I think sets Moonrakers apart from other deck builders and what makes it have a special place in my heart personally as a reviewer. So again, I hope this gets you excited for what's in this expansion. I hope this gets you excited for the Kickstarter coming out and gets you, like it got me, eager and excited and jazzed about playing Moonrakers and bringing it back to the table because of all the new experiences and content you'll be able to have. So I want to thank you for coming to Meeple Mountain for your board game review needs. Any questions you have, I hope you'll continue to do so. And as always, happy gaming.
Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out these links to find some other games you might want to bring to the table. This is Tyler Williams, signing off.